Hey all, this is Redditosker. I got to play most of the sessions of the Elden Ring Nightreign network test, and in this video I want to give my thoughts on it. So first of all, I like it a lot. Much of the gameplay is just like Elden Ring, but it's faster, it's more tense. For me, playing Elden Ring or any of the Souls games is kind of a slow experience. I meander a lot, as I craft a build and wander around for long periods of time. And even when I make a new build, I tend to stick to the same kind of weapons that I already like. And so Nightreign's kind of the opposite of that. The focus is on speed. You're moving quickly with your friends from one place to another, rapidly getting levels and loot. Once you get that loot, you need to make fast decisions as to what you're going to keep and what you're going to throw away, and you can't always afford to be super choosy. In most of the Souls games I have a kind of aversion to the big strength weapons, I don't usually use them. But in Nightreign I felt often incentivized to just grab the big weapon if it's the best weapon I have available. Which means I'm seeing movesets and using weapons that in normal circumstances I would go out of my way to avoid. I like the tension that the game has on offer. As soon as you drop in, it's go go go, you ping a location to your friends, you all run up to it, clear it, grab the loot, head to the next location, someone suggests somewhere else, alright, let's go over there. We see a field boss along the way, alright, let's clear it. And then let's clear the big castle at the center of the map, but before we do that, there's a Church of Marika nearby, let's grab that to get more Estus. And the increased movement options really lend itself to this kind of gameplay. You have the surge sprint, running around fast everywhere, vaulting over areas, vaulting over buildings, vaulting on top of enemies, jumping on spirit springs, grabbing an eagle to get somewhere faster. You need to move fast so that you can accumulate enough strength to beat the Night Lord at the end of the third day. It's frenetic, but it's very fun. It wasn't until the last network test that I got to play with friends, and it wasn't until you were playing with friends in a group call that the game really opens up. For me, that's the heart of the game. I'm going to try and avoid as much as possible playing with randoms. In the network test, you weren't really able to play solo, but I think it's obvious just from how the game is structured that this game is balanced around group play. In the full game, being able to go in solo will be possible, but I have no confidence that From Software will balance it well for solo play. It'll certainly be possible to clear it solo, but I don't think it'll be fun, no matter how much they scale down the enemy HP or damage. At the time of release, there won't be the ability to go in with just 2 people. And I think the reason for that is simply because it's balanced for 3. It's balanced exclusively for 3. No thought has gone into any other number of players. In my opinion, the only reason you'll be able to go in solo is simply because they would have gotten a lot of complaints if that wasn't the case. Now, during the network test, I had a lot of fun, but my impression coming out of it is mixed. I have a lot of complaints, but I'm having trouble assessing those complaints because it's possible that what I'm worried about isn't representative of the whole game, just the network test itself. My biggest concern is that everything in the game is just going to be Limgrave. I'm worried that every map for every boss will just have repackaged Limgrave into different configurations, and that maybe you'll have specific locations that can appear that look, a little bit different, but the overworld, most of the overworld, will just have the Limgrave aesthetic. And I have a big problem with that because Elden Ring has some of the best art style in any game ever. It would be a terrible waste and extremely repetitive to only have the Limgrave stuff used throughout the entire game. What I would want is that this Limgrave map is tied to this boss, Gladius. But if you choose, let's say, the second Night Lord to fight, maybe his map doesn't look like Limgrave at all, it looks like Liurnia. Maybe the third one looks like Caelid, maybe the fourth one looks like Altus Plateau. Making use of that place's yellow trees, its architecture, its encampments. Maybe a map that makes use of the Shifra Riverwell aesthetic, as well as the night cities, like Nokron and the Deeproot Depths. That one would be particularly cool. Maybe the whole thing could be underground, but just in a very large cavern so you can still make use of the Spirit Spring jumps and Spirit Eagles. In the Elden Ring Nightreign trailer, it shows several locations that do look pretty distinct. There's an environment that looks like Caelid, where you can see the Duke's Deer Freya. Then there's one where you seem to be deep underground and it's covered in lava everywhere. There's also a place that seems to be using Eternal City architecture, but above ground like Celia. And I find these locations very encouraging. They suggest that maybe it isn't just going to be Limgrave all the way down. There will be maps with other more unique aesthetics. And I hope that's true, but I'm not convinced. Because it could be the case that different maps will have oddities like this, and still be Limgrave in every other part of the map. For example, this Eternal City architecture could be something that can happen in map 4 or that is always in map 4. But if you leave this little city area, maybe every other part of the map has nothing to do with the Eternal Cities, and just again looks like Limgrave. This Caelid-looking area might just be a single spot of Caelid-looking area amidst a sea of Limgrave-looking areas. Or it could be a consequence of the procedural generation. In the network test, things are pretty static, but I think in the full game, there will be a chance for things like some kind of lava castle, or a lava area, or a swamp to appear in certain parts of the map. And those different locations might be large and might be very distinct looking, but that doesn't guarantee that the whole map is going to look like those specific areas. And if I'm right, if the whole area looks like Limgrave for every map, that's going to be a very big problem for me. It's going to be a serious point of contention. I am not interested in looking at 8 different versions of remixed Limgrave over and over, especially when the rest of Elden Ring has so much really great locations to draw from. Give me remixed Liurnia, remixed Altus, remixed Mountaintop, remixed Volcano area. Don't just give me Limgrave. Now, another complaint that I have, again, might only apply to the network test, and that's that the map that we were given access to was pretty repetitive. I think in the full game there will be some element of procedural generation, and things will not always spawn in the same place. But in the network test, the enemies were always in the same place, the structures were always in the same place. The map, for the most part, just didn't change, at least not in meaningful ways that I could tell. Well, that's not entirely true. There were very light elements of things moving around. Sometimes you would go to a boss room and there'd be a Crucible Knight, and then other times you'd go to that same boss room and it'd be a Misbegotten. Sometimes you go to the top of the castle in the center and there'd be Loretta, and then sometimes it'd be a Godskin Apostle enemy. And then occasionally one of your party members would be targeted by Margit. And that one was really cool. Those are always fun when that happens. But other than that, the static map gets very repetitive quickly. In the full game, I hope that something is done for this. Either that you don't get the same map every time you choose the same boss, or that these little encampments don't necessarily have to have, or even be encampments. They don't have to have the same enemies or be encampments at all. There is some chance it could be something else, so that each of your runs feels more fresh. And if that happened, it would probably address my other complaint, which is that the game is a little too easy. But that easiness is probably a consequence of things not changing. Since things don't change, I know where to go by the end of the network test. I know where to hit up to get stronger, and with no surprises or deviation, nothing is really putting me on the back foot. I can reliably get to level 15 with strong weapons by the end of the 3rd day, if I know where everything is. That extra bit of randomness is very important. Finally, my last concern, well, it's not even a concern. Information that I would like to have at this point is about the story. I am a very story-oriented person. Even if the game is mostly focused on gameplay, some semblance of a story is necessary for me to really enjoy it. And at this moment, now that we understand, kind of, how Nightreign is going to play, I find myself really needing to know why these things are happening. Why is the Nameless King there? Why do my characters care? Why are we fighting the Night Lord? Is there going to be an emphasis on story, even if it isn't tied to Elden Ring? At the moment, I'm working under the assumption that Nightreign is not going to be important to Elden Ring. It's not going to have any information that will help Elden Ring lore people. But it doesn't have to. I've compared Nightreign to Hyrule Warriors quite a bit, and I'll use that comparison here again. In Hyrule Warriors, that game has its own story. There are events that are happening there that are important to Hyrule Warriors, but that aren't necessarily important to the games that the characters come from different parts of the timeline in Zelda. So that really is, a Princess Ruto from Ocarina of Time, and that really is Zant from Twilight Princess and Girahim and Midna. And it's fun to see them interact, and it's fanfiction-y, but there is also a story of Hyrule Warriors that is exclusive to it, that matters to it, even if that story doesn't necessarily matter to Ocarina of Time and the like. And something along those lines is what I'm hoping for with Nightreign. Even if the story has nothing to do with Elden Ring, I would like it to stand on its own merit. I would still want it to be good by its standards. The game is bearing Elden Ring's name. It's using its locations, its assets, and apparently has the same history up until the Shattering, at which point it diverges. And I think that gives it a certain responsibility to be good. And I hope that the people working at From Software that are working on this game understand that. Alright, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.